The steel gate rolled shut with a low mechanical groan, and Melissa Grant's white SUV stopped dead in the middle of the opening. Gravel jumped under her tires, brake lights flared. Behind her, the mourning line of cars froze one by one, as if the whole neighborhood had run into an invisible wall. Melissa stood there in a dark pink blazer, curly golden hair catching the light, her face twisting from confidence into disbelief. Far back on the road, a small police SUV waited near the bend, barely visible but unmistakable. The man beside the gate did not move. He held the remote in one hand and looked at the scene with the calm of someone who had already done the paperwork, checked the boundary markers, and confirmed exactly where the line was. For years, this dirt road had been treated like a public shortcut. In 1 second, it became private again, and everyone trapped behind that gate was about to learn the same lesson at once.
Evan Mercer had not bought 60 acres just for land. He had bought it for silence, space, and the kind of life where nobody treated his property like a public hallway. He worked construction, trusted measurements more than opinions, and liked knowing exactly where a wall, fence, or boundary really stood. The land sat just beyond Willow Creek Estates, close enough for the neighborhood to notice, but far enough to stay outside the HOA's reach. That was exactly why he wanted it. What he did not expect was the dirt road cutting across the middle of the acreage. It had been packed down for years by daily traffic from the subdivision behind it, shaving 15 minutes off the drive to the highway. Residents used it without hesitation. Delivery trucks used it. Parents rushing to work used it. They drove through Evans' land like habit had turned into permission. Melissa Grant, the HOA president, only made the problem worse. She carried herself like the road belonged to her by default, always polished, always composed, always in a dark pink blazer, her curly golden hair perfect even on dusty afternoons. Evan noticed the warning signs early, the casual glances, the homemade sign near the entrance, the way people started speaking about the route like it was owed to them. So he ordered surveys, pulled county records, and began documenting everything. The first real violation came quietly, and that made it worse. One morning, Evan found a fresh metal sign planted near the road entrance, stamped with neat lettering that claimed the path as a community access route. It was positioned to look official, designed to confuse anyone who did not know the land. A few days later, HOA residents started treating the road with even more confidence, as if the sign had transformed assumption into law. Then the letters started arriving, clean envelopes, formal language, carefully worded threats about violations, community standards, and possible fines if the route was blocked. None of it mattered legally, but that was not the point. The point was pressure. Melissa was trying to turn repetition into authority. Evan kept his response quiet. He did not argue at the mailbox. He did not confront every car. He just collected records, took photos, and marked the line with orange survey flags. The county maps were clear. The property line was clear. There was no easement, no recorded right-of-way, no agreement that gave the HOA any claim to the shortcut. That was when the irritation turned personal. They had not just been passing through his land, they had been trying to redefine it. Once the HOA realized Evan was not backing down, the pressure increased. Traffic got heavier, almost defiant. Cars rolled through slower now, as if the drivers wanted him to see them. Some residents waved like he was supposed to accept it. Others looked annoyed that he had the nerve to stand on land they had enjoyed for years. Melissa escalated too. She pushed the idea that the road was essential, that access had always existed, that the neighborhood depended on it. More notices followed. Then came a work crew with gravel, posts, and tools, ready to make the shortcut look permanent. They began treating the path like a project they had every right to improve. Evan watched from the edge of the property as the road became more than a nuisance. It became a challenge. Cameras went up along the boundary. New survey checks confirmed the line again. Every document pointed to the same truth. The road was theirs only in their imagination. By the end of the week, Melissa had moved from assumption to aggression, and the whole neighborhood was about to find out what happens when convenience runs into law. The breaking point came when the crew returned with the intention of widening the path right up to Evan's boundary. Fresh stakes were driven into the dirt. Gravel was dumped near the entrance. A delivery of materials sat in the morning sun like the HOA had already won. Melissa arrived not long after, still dressed like she was overseeing a board-approved project. Dark pink blazer crisp, clipboard in hand, golden curls bouncing as she crossed the gravel. That was the moment Evan understood they were not just trying to use the road, they were trying to formalize their use by force. They wanted him to accept a permanent change through exhaustion, embarrassment, and pressure. Instead, he pulled out the full boundary map, the county filings, and the survey records he had prepared in advance. Everything matched, every marker, every line, every note from the county clerk. The crew started to hesitate. Melissa did not. She doubled down, trying to push the work forward by confidence alone. But confidence could not move dirt that did not belong to her. Evan waited until the road was busiest, until the neighborhood routine was at its strongest, and then he walked to the gate remote with the kind of patience that only comes from being right. The next morning looked ordinary until it was not. Cars began arriving in the usual line, one after another, dust rising behind them. The gate stood open just long enough to make the traffic feel safe, familiar, automatic. Evan let the first few vehicles pass. Then the line thickened, more cars, more pressure, more certainty from the people who still thought this would be another normal day. Melissa's white SUV slid into the queue close enough to matter. She looked composed until the gate started moving. Evan pressed the remote, and the steel barrier glided across the opening with a quiet finality that changed everything in seconds. The first driver braked, then the next, then the whole line froze. Melissa stepped out of her SUV fast, anger replacing control as she faced a reality she had ignored for too long. The neighborhood watched from behind her, some drivers getting out of their cars, others staring at the gate like it had betrayed them personally. Then the local police SUV rolled in and stopped near the edge of the property. The officer checked the survey documents, the deed, and the boundary records. The answer was simple. There was no easement, no recorded right-of-way, no legal shortcut. The crowd fell quiet. Melissa's expression shifted from certainty to shock to something closer to humiliation. The gate had not just blocked traffic, it had exposed a lie everyone had gotten used to believing.
After that morning, the shortcut collapsed almost overnight. The traffic vanished from Evans Land, and the empty road looked larger than it ever had when it was packed with cars. The HOA sent more notices, but the tone changed. Less command, more caution. The board eventually had to face the truth. Habit did not create ownership. If they wanted access, they would need a real agreement or a different route. Either option came with cost, and cost was exactly what they had spent years avoiding. Melissa never recovered her authority the way she thought she would. The residents stopped looking at Evan like a problem and started looking at the road like a privilege they had taken for granted. The grass along the boundary began to grow back. The cameras came down. The gate stayed exactly where it belonged. Evan's land finally felt like his land, quiet, open, private, protected. And the whole conflict ended because one man finally asked the question the neighborhood had avoided for years. If a shortcut only works because nobody challenges it, was it ever really theirs at all?